Hello, everybody. It, Welcome back to another episode of Pro Life, Pro Liberty Live. Um, I was asked, and I was already kind of planning to do this, but then I had somebody ask if I would talk about vaccine passports today. So that is the plan. And so we'll focus on that. But if you guys have other questions, if you have other topics, and you're in the chat right now and you're able to chat live right now, let me know what other things you might want to hear about. Um, but we can kind of talk about whatever. But I wanted to kind of start with all this stuff about the vaccine passports. And this is a little bit of an I told you so episode. And that's why I put that in the title. We're going to do a little bit of I told you so. Because so, if you've been watching any of the news, this none of this should be a surprise to you. Um, yes, New York is rolling out their vaccine passport, pass, and telling businesses you can reopen. You've been asking to reopen. You can reopen if you implement this procedure, if you implement this pass. If you say you must have this pass, this little QR code, you know, on the phone, you have to have it on here. Scan your little code, and then you can open up at greater capacity or with less restrictions, or just open up at all. Some of these businesses have just straight up been closed. Some of them won't be able to open up even with the passport. Some of them are just closed permanently. Um, but so that's the thing is it's like I think there are some people out there who are still looking at this vaccine passport thing and going, okay, well, here's our ticket back. This is our if we just comply with this one more thing. There was 15 days to slow the spread. It was wear a mask, social distance, do work from home, do everything online, limited capacity, blah, 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 cancel everything. And then it was like, okay, now if everybody gets the vaccine and has their little vaccine passport, then we can go back to normal. That's going to be the ticket. And we know it's not. We know that that's not. But some people are still under that impression. They're still under the impression that if we just continue to comply, which is what we've been doing all along, we've been, masking, and that's even me. Like, as much as I've been talking about um, pushing back against this nonsense and fighting back, and COVID is over and all of that. If I go to Starbucks, if I go to there's a lot of places where I still have to wear a mask because they do still enforce it. And so I've compromised, and I get it. And that's the thing is people tell me, it's like, well, I have to wear the mask. I have to do this. I have to do that. And I get it, right? I have to wear a mask at work. There's no getting around it unless I quit my job, which I'm not quite able to do yet. We'll see what happens with GameStop this month, but we might get to the point where I get to quit my job and do all of that. But right now, no. Right now, it's I gotta wear the mask. I'm still trying to get HR to grant my ADA accommodation with my note from my doctor, but they're being slow about it. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But they're not going to let this up. And even if they do start to give some free, quote unquote, give some freedoms back, they start to allow you to do things that you never had to ask permission for in the past, like hosting a family gathering. That's not something you used to have to ask permission for. Even if they start allowing those things, they're still maintaining this level of control where at any time they could say, oh, nope, not anymore. New threat, new thing. We get to take that away from you now. So I wanted to go over just a couple of points just about how we know that this is not over, that they're not letting us go back to normal. And I'm not going to play these clips because most likely, number one, most likely you've already seen them. Number two, I've linked them all in the description so you can go check them out. But I don't want to play around with trying to share the clips and the audio, and sometimes that doesn't work well. So I'm just gonna talk about them and reference them in the description. You can click on them, go watch them. Um, the first one is Dr. Leana Wen. So if you're not familiar with her, I first became familiar with Dr. Wen because she was temporarily the president of Planned Parenthood. Now, what was really interesting about Dr. Wen is she only remained president of Planned Parenthood for 9 months, which, people made their own connections with that. But the reason why she got kicked out was because she was trying to make Planned Parenthood move in a more medical, health focused direction. She wanted Planned Parenthood to be the community health clinic that they always claimed to be. She recognized that they were too focused on abortion, and she tried to move them away from that, and they wouldn't, and they kicked her out. So she's no longer president of Planned Parenthood. But now she's kind of positioned herself as this medical expert that gets called on for CNN and MSNBC and whoever. Like, she's kind of their like medical expert to come talk about this. Um, and so she's been very, very pro lockdown, very pro mask, very pro vaccine, very pro vaccine passport, as we'll see in these couple of sources from her. So the first thing we have is she has an op-ed in the Washington Post. No, yeah, the Washington Post, which at this point, honestly, the Washington Post is just straight up state propaganda. There's no like, it's not even like pretending really anymore to be journalism. It's just straight up state propaganda. Like, the amount of just blatant pro Biden pieces that, like, I mean, they're not even pretending to be impartial. They're not even, I don't even think they're claiming it at this point. They are just straight up like state media. This is like in North Korea or China or probably Venezuela or Cuba. You have your official state media, and that's who you're supposed to listen to, and they're going to be the mouthpiece of the state. That's the Washington Post right now. So if you're reading stuff from them, just take it with that grain of salt. That this is we think about like Russian state media. Oh, oh, that's Russian state media. It's Russian propaganda. This is propaganda, straight up. But Dr. Wen had a op-ed, and this op-ed was back in March, March 8th. Well, I'm back in March, like that was like 3 days ago, but like March 8th, back at the beginning of March, so almost a month ago. And and I think I feel like I shared it back then. I might have, I might not have, or at least I saw it back then. But it was definitely this kind of like she was criticizing the CDC for not giving um, more guidance on what people could do after getting vaccinated and not giving vaccinated people more freedom. She's basically saying, like, once you're vaccinated, like, she's basically saying the CDC needs to tell people that once they're vaccinated, they can go do all these things, and maybe not everything, maybe not totally back to normal, which I'm like, what's the point of this vaccine if we don't get to go back to normal? But she's like, but you can travel and you don't have to quarantine. And, she was saying all those things. And it's just funny that we weren't hearing that from the CDC, but she basically said, you have to tie these incentives to the vaccine. Things like seeing your family. You have to tie that to the vaccine. She's basically saying not so much because people should have freedom or people should be able to go back and go out and do things, but she's basically saying it because you want people to get the vaccine, so you need to give them an incentive. And she expanded upon that more recently. Um, and oh, I had the link up because I just wanted to check the date on it. Let me just check the date. Was March 12th. March 12th is when she posted it. I'm assuming that that's approximately when this happened. But she went on CNN, and with Chris Cuomo, the younger Cuomo, not the governor, the CNN anchor. And she went on with Chris Cuomo, and she said, we have to, let me get the exact quote. Well, first of all, she tweeted. So the link that I have in the description is actually to her tweet where she tweeted the video. So this is this video clip. And a lot of times we take these video clips and it's like, oh, that clip was taken out of context. No, she takes the clip. So it's not out of context because she's giving you the clip. She's saying, here's the clip. This is what I want you to watch. And it's like a, however many minute, it's a 1 minute clip. It's a 1 minute, 20-second clip that she puts out on her Twitter with this statement. I'm very concerned that we won't reach herd immunity in the US because of vaccine complacency, not anti-vax people but those who need to be incentivized and see what's in it for them. We need to clearly message vaccination equals ticket to pre-pandemic life. And then she goes into her interview, or her discussion with Chris Cuomo, where she essentially says that if we open up and people start enjoying freedoms without the vaccine, then there is no incentive for them to get the vaccine. And she says those, like, in almost those exact same words. If people start enjoying their freedoms without the vaccine, then how will we ever get them to get the vaccine? So, what she's saying is, if people realize that they don't need the vaccine to go see their family, they don't need the vaccine to travel, to go back to normal, if they don't need it, why would they get it? And that's exactly been my point. You don't need it. You don't need a vaccine to go see your family. You don't need a vaccine to travel. You don't need a vaccine to do any of these things, because these are freedoms that we are supposed to enjoy without any, you know, messing around from the government. Like, we should be able to travel. We should be able to see our families. We should be able to have backyard barbecues on the 4th of July, regardless of who has or has not been vaccinated. And now I will always say, if you want the vaccine, if you've read the literature, if you've talked to your doctor, you've analyzed it all, and for your situation, whatever that may be, you've said, I need this vaccine, go for it. Absolutely go for it. Right? And if you haven't been able to get it yet, you probably will be soon. I know in Texas, anybody can sign up for it at this point. It's open to everybody. They're still prioritizing, I think, in appointments and stuff like that. Apparently, if you're in Vermont, you can only get the vaccine if you fall into one of the high risk categories or you're a person of color. So if you're a white person who doesn't fall into one of those categories, you're out of luck if you want that vaccine. But the thing is, it's been really funny here in Texas with the vaccine, because we've been, they started rolling out the vaccine in Texas, and they started with the vulnerable populations, the big vulnerable groups, and then they moved to teachers. They started rolling it out to teachers and all of this. And it's funny because my aunt lives in Spain, and she and I don't see eye to eye on most things, and that's okay. I love her still. She is my aunt. Um, but she's my mom's sister, and she commented to my mom, "Wow, Texas is doing really well moving through the different vaccine categories, because it's like 1A, 1B, whatever. They're moving really fast. They must be vaccinating people really quickly." And my mom pointed out, they're moving so quickly because a lot of people don't want the vaccine, and so they're able to move on to the next category because the people in the category they were supposed to be vaccinating said no to it. So I think we're going to see. I think we're really close to a point where all the people who really want the vaccine will have it, and everybody else is going to be like, no thanks. And if they don't, and I think that's what they're scared of right now. Because if you listen to them talk about vaccines and the vaccine passport, listen to Dr. Liana Wen, what they're scared of right now is that we will get to that point where you've gone through everybody who wants the vaccine desperately, and you get to the people who just are like, whatever, I don't really want it, I don't care. Maybe I'm hesitant, I want to wait a while, you know, see what the long-term effects are, that sort of thing. When you get to those people where those are the only people left, if you don't already have a vaccine passport in place, it's going to be really hard to implement it. And so they're rushing to try and implement some kind of vaccine identification system so that they start dangling that carrot in front of people and saying, oh, better get your vaccine, better not wait. Because they don't want to get to the end of the initial rush. You have this initial rush of people who want the vaccine desperately. They've been waiting for the vaccine. They are trying to line up. They're refreshing the page, trying to get their appointment. You're going to run out of those people because they're all going to get vaccinated. And then what? And then you're left with people like me. You're left with people who are just like, you know what? I'm not too worried about it. Let other people go first. And we're all going to say, who cares? So they're going to try and rush the system. But here's the thing. So, I mean, you've already got Florida saying no. Florida's saying, nope, you don't. We're not going to do a vaccine passport. We're actually going to ban vaccine passports. You are not allowed to require somebody to get the vaccine in order to participate in these things, which is good because that's protecting HIPAA and privacy, like medical privacy laws. Now they're claiming that a vaccine passport will not violate your privacy because the other person, the person you're showing the passport to, won't actually see your name or any identifying information. But what they will see is whether you've been vaccinated. And that's part of your medical privacy, right? Like, now, one option, one possibility that they've been talking about with these vaccine passports is that one thing they may do, and I think the New York passport actually has this already in place because not everybody in New York is vaccinated yet, or even can be. I think they're still rolling it out in New York. What they're doing is saying if you've had a recent negative test, you can you can use the passport for that as well so that you can go get tested and it'll show up in your little account with your little vaccine passport app. My understanding is what that means. So the my understanding of the way the passports that are currently implemented work is you have your phone and you pull up your little code, your little QR code, and you show it to the person. And let me just clear my like I got all these notifications and stuff. But like you show your little passport, they scan the little QR code, and what shows up on the person who's scanning, they see either a green check mark, yay, or a red X. And but they don't see any information about you. If that's the case, number one, okay, so that may protect privacy in the sense that if like you either had the vaccine or you had a recent test and they don't necessarily know which, you just get a green, you're good to go. If they keep that in place, that is the passport thing is still terrible, but it does allow for a workaround for those of you and me who don't want to get the vaccine. We can potentially go get a test, which would still be obnoxious and just a huge violation of rights that I'm required to go get a test in order to go like get tested every week to do these things. That's dumb. But it does allow workaround for somebody who's like, I do not want the vaccine. I cannot get the vaccine for whatever reason, but I absolutely have to have this passport in order to work, in order to go places. Like if you're in New York, right? If you're in New York City and you're like, I can't go to the grocery store unless I have this passport, this is your workaround. The other thing, this is the fun part. The other thing is, so they've claimed that any national passport system, and I don't know if this is true about the Excelsior Pass in New York, but I know this is what they're promising if they institute a national passport system. What they're claiming is that it will be open source. Open source means you can see the code. The purpose of that is to and be able to ensure that the code is not, that the app is not sending your data somewhere, right? That it's not revealing your data too much. And that's why they make it open source. So it's like you can see the code, you can see what it does, and engineers, software engineers, coders can look into it and analyze it and then report out and say, yep, it's good, passes all these, checks off of these boxes for privacy, whatever. But if the code is available, it'd be really easy for somebody who has some basic coding knowledge to figure out what in the code, triggers the green light basically on the other end. What is it that the other end is looking for to say, yes, you're good to go, green, check mark, good. And it would be really easy for them to create a QR code, basically create a clone of the app, but then change it so that your QR code always says you're good to go. I'm not advocating, I'm not saying you should do that, but I'm just saying that may become an option real quick if they try to roll this out on a national level. It may already be in effect. That may already be out there for Excelsior, for New York. I don't know. I haven't looked enough into it yet. That may be something I kind of researched just to see what's already out there. I know as of right now, it is incredibly easy to fake the little CDC vaccination cards. Like it's incredibly easy to do that. If you go to Twitter and you search blank vaccine card, it comes up. Like it's like here's the link to the PDFs where you can print this out and fill in, and it even has the instructions for how to fill it in to make it look convincing. So that is a thing. That is a thing that exists. I'm not advocating that you do that. I'm just letting you know that I'm reporting to you but that is a thing that exists. So, what I think is going to happen if we do get into a vaccine passport system that is nationwide, I think there will be workarounds. Now, it's still insane and we should resist it and push back on it wherever we can. I would encourage businesses to announce their policies now, not to wait for this to be put into effect, but to say now up front publicly, we will not require vaccine passports or vaccine identification, because the more the Biden administration hears from businesses, if they're looking out on social media, if they're looking out in the court of public opinion, and businesses are saying we will not participate in this, it will make them think twice. Honestly, I think as much as I would say that it's it can be frustrating sometimes because it feels like we are not heard by our government, and in a sense, we are not in the way we would like to be. We don't have true representation the way we would like to have. Um, the government does listen to pushback to a certain extent. Now, that doesn't mean we've had pushback over COVID stuff, but what I've found is once a government policy is implemented, it takes a lot to get them to reverse it. But when a policy is being proposed or floated, like somebody floats the idea and there's pushback immediately, they tend to walk it back. I've seen it happen. We saw it happen at the beginning of COVID when some states started trying to talk about like quarantine facilities and things like that. There was a lot of pushback, and they walked some of those statements back. So I do think there is some power in the pushback, some power in businesses and individuals saying we will not participate in this. But I also want to let you know that if you're worried that like this is going to get implemented and you're not going to be able to do this, there may be workarounds. It may be the case that you just need a test. You go get your rapid test, or you go get a test where you have to wait for it, whatever, either way. You get your test and that updates the system. It's still awful, but it may be a workaround that works for some people. Or you may find that there's an app that ends up solving your problem. However, I will say that as far as the idea of an app that sends out the QR code that makes it light up green on the other end, most likely if you have an Apple device, if you have an iPhone like I do, you will either need to jailbreak it or switch to Android in order to download the kind of app that I'm talking about, because Apple tends to be very restrictive of their app store. Whereas with an Android phone, you can download other app stores, you can download apps elsewhere. It doesn't have to be through Google Play or anything like that. So you will have more options if you are on Android than you will if you are on iPhone. So I may end up switching to Android. We will see what happens. But right now, I'm hopeful for Texas. As much as Governor Abbott is still not on my good list, right? Like I still have, I have my list of politicians who, no politician, there's no political saviors. We don't trust politicians. We don't count on politicians. They are not there to help us. But I do have my list of politicians that have demonstrated their ability to stand up for people and do their jobs. And sadly, Rand Paul does not represent me directly, but he is still on my good list. I've seen him do good things. Ted Cruz, I have seen good things from him. Dan Patrick, who's our lieutenant governor, Dan Patrick, and Ken Paxton, our state attorney general. Those two have done some good things for Texas. I've seen them walk the walk. Greg Abbott, not so much. John Cornyn, not so much. Roger Williams, he's pushing it. He's pushing it. Actually, yeah, really, Roger Williams, not so much. but Dan Patrick, Ken Paxton, they've done well. But Greg Abbott, he opened up, and I will give him credit that he opened up and he dropped the mask mandate. However, he never acknowledged that what he did initially was wrong. He never acknowledged that he was wrong to shut down in the first place. He could have said we didn't have the information at the time. I thought I made the best decision at the time. I now know that decision was wrong. I would accept that. I would accept that answer. But to say that, oh, well, now that our numbers are better, now we can reopen. That tells me that if the numbers change, if the narrative changes, if all of a sudden the federal government starts pushing a lockdown again, I think he will lock down. I think he will. I can't trust him. I can't trust him to not lock down. Governor DeSantis, he's not going to lock down. Kristi Noem, she's not going to lock down. Abbott, we'll see. We'll see. I don't trust him. Um, that's probably a good thing. You're not supposed to really trust politicians, but I just wish we had a governor who would take principled positions and not flake out, But the thing is, he is up for re-election. I think in 2022. I think he is. I have to double check that. And if that's the case, that's where we're going to see if he's up for re-election in 2022. I think we're going to see him take a harder stance against the federal government because he knows that plays well with his base. So I think he's going to be trying to salvage his election run pretty soon here. And so we will see him hopefully that lines up with this whole vaccine passport thing. And hopefully that means that Texas pushes back um, in a similar way to Florida. But I really wish Greg Abbott would take more cues from DeSantis because I don't want to move to Florida, but right now it's starting to look pretty good. So if you're in a liberal state, if you're in a locked down, crazy state, and you're like, I need to move somewhere else, I wouldn't come to Texas right now. If you're just looking for freedom, if you're just looking, I want to be free, I want to get away from this crazy COVID stuff, I would look at Florida because I honestly think they're better positioned to resist the next push. I don't know that Texas is ready for the next push, and I think it's going to come soon. So I talked about Dr. Leana Wen for quite a while there. But because she says the quiet part out loud. She says oh, well, we got to have the carrot, she uses the phrase, what's the carrot? like, as in we're dangling a carrot in front of people to get them to take this vaccine. She says this. So I wanted to make sure we understood that that's what it was. And there's her op-ed is in the description, her clip on CNN with her tweet where she tweeted out the clip. This is not her being taken out of context. This is not an edited video. This is her. She tweeted it out from her official blue check mark account. And it's been up. She didn't take it down. She's not backtracking on it. She's owning that statement. She's not apologetic about it, but it sounds just utterly dystopian. It sounds like, her clip on CNN, you listen to it, and it sounds like she's in some closed door meeting with the elites planning out their next move. But no, she said this on national television. And I'm like, do you realize that we were all listening to that? Do you realize that we all heard that? So anyway, so those two clips are there, or those two links are there. Then we have CDC Director Dr. Rochelle Walensky on her sense of impending doom. And so she does this, and it was really funny because I was watching Blaze TV. I was watching the news and Why It Matters, and they were covering this. And so she's giving this update. She's like, "Oh, here's our hospitalization rates are up, our case numbers are up. What's going on?" And then she goes, "I'm gonna put aside the script for a little bit." She's like, "I'm gonna go off script," and then she doesn't actually go off script because you can tell that she's still reading. She's still reading from a teleprompter. She set down her papers, but she's still reading from a teleprompter. So she isn't really off script. But she goes on and says and tries to do this emotional appeal of well, I'm a mother and I'm a doctor and she does the whole, and this has driven me crazy the entire time with COVID, especially once we knew that it was not primarily transmitted, that it didn't primarily impact younger people and it was primarily older people with pre-existing conditions who were having serious time with it. And what we were seeing was older people with pre-existing conditions who were dying in the hospital, and their families were not allowed to come see them and say goodbye, even with gown and glove and whatever. They were not allowed to come see them and say goodbye. And so she does this thing, and I've heard other doctors and nurses do it, and it drives me crazy because she does this thing where she says, I experienced with the mask and the shield and the gown and the glove and everything, being in a room with a patient and being the last person to touch someone's loved one because their loved ones couldn't be there with them. It was because of people like you, medical politicians. I'm kind of called medical politicians. These are doctors and nurses who are not speaking as healthcare experts, they're speaking as politicians who advocated for separating people from their loved ones at those last moments and not allowing people to come and be with their loved ones in those last moments. You were the reason that their loved one couldn't be with them. Not because of COVID, not because of a virus, but because you implemented a policy where even with all the precautions, you couldn't allow someone to come and see their loved one. There was a joke at the beginning of or kind of a month or so into COVID about, imagine somebody went into a coma like February of 2020 and then wakes up, you know, now, whenever we know, like, so the joke changed over time, but they wake up from the coma and you're having to explain to them all the craziness that has happened. That actually happened. There was a kid in the UK who went into a coma before COVID stuff kicked in. I think back it was like winter of 2019 or whatever, and then woke up like a couple months ago. And this kid wakes up from the coma, and the mother was not allowed to go hug her son. You you wake up from a coma, you are alone. Everybody's wearing masks and gloves and just totally crazy like virus precautions, and you're like, what the heck happened? Like it's like post-apocalyptic, and it reminds me of Walking Dead, when the main character, first episode, main character wakes up in the hospital alone. Now it's like zombies and stuff, but it's still this idea of you wake up and the world has changed and none of your loved ones are around you to explain to you what has happened. And this mother could not go hug her son, and the son had COVID while in the coma and recovered from it while in the coma. So he was recovered from COVID, and he couldn't see, his mother could not come in and hold him. And that is because of the policies of medical politicians like Fauci, like Dr. Wen, like Dr. Walensky. They are medical politicians who are making these decisions not based on the science, but based on this desire for control. And that's, Dr. Liana Wen said the quiet part out loud. She said, we have to maintain control. We have to have these incentives to get people to take this vaccine. And so we have to tie freedoms and pre-pandemic life to this vaccine, because she wants you to think that that's your only way out. But we see from Dr. Walensky, we see from Dr. Wen, we see from Dr. Fauci that they do not intend to let up ever, because they keep pushing it back. It was 15 days, then it was just a few more months, then it was just if everybody wore masks, then it was if once we had the vaccine out. Now it's like, well, we have to get a certain percentage of people vaccinated. It never ends. And so you see that. So first you have Dr. Walensky with her trying to emotionally manipulate everybody and scare everybody again. Like, this should be the time, if according to their initial narratives that we need this vaccine and blah blah blah, this should be the time where we all have hope. The vaccine's out, it's available. People are getting vaccinated, not just elderly, sick people or people in high risk healthcare occupations, everyday people. My Facebook timeline is full of people getting their first or second shot. People getting the Johnson and Johnson, which is just one shot. They're one and done. My Facebook timeline is just full of people getting their vaccine. And yet you're still telling me that we have to be scared, that the case numbers are rising and sense of impending doom. What in the world is happening? They're ramping up the narrative again. And so Walensky does this, but then she also, around the same time, said vaccinated people don't carry the virus. And I had somebody, and I need to actually respond to this post, because I did a post and it was 6 reasons that I am not getting the COVID vaccine. And one of my reasons was, we don't have data that shows that it prevents transmission or infection, or we don't know how much it prevents transmission or infection. And the FDA website says we don't know if it prevents transmission or infection. And the person responded to me, said, look, here's the CDC director saying vaccinated people don't carry the virus. Well, I've got the link down in the description where the CDC has to walk that back now, because sure enough, some people have gotten COVID after getting fully vaccinated. Now, is it a huge number? No, but I also think we are reaching natural herd immunity in some places because enough people got the virus back in 2020 when our numbers were all this high and all these people have the virus and I think enough people got it back then that I think we are seeing a natural herd immunity, which is how viruses work. If we had just let it run its course, we would have hit it back in 2020. If we'd protected the vulnerable and we'd let everybody else deal with a flu, because that's the thing, is for young healthy individuals, it is more comparable to a flu. For older individuals and those with severe pre-existing conditions, it can be more severe, but then again, so is the flu. The flu is also very severe for older people with pre-existing conditions. It kills people with pre-existing conditions. The flu does. So if from the beginning we'd said we got this new virus, we know it primarily affects older people, we know it affects people with pre-existing conditions, we know what the conditions are that it affects. And we're gaining more data all the time. So let's isolate the older people and let everybody else go live their lives and let the virus run through the population. Some people are going to get a flu. We protect the older people and we'll get herd immunity, and then the old people and the sick people and all of them can come back into the population and be fine because we'll have enough herd immunity that they won't get it or are very unlikely to get it. If we'd done that from the beginning, this would all be over, but we didn't do that. Instead, we made everybody stay inside. We brought down everybody's vitamin D levels because everybody stayed inside, didn't exercise, didn't eat healthy, and I mean, exercise isn't so much vitamin D, although I think there's a connection, but people didn't get to go outdoors. They were told not to go outdoors. They were told not to go to public parks. They were told not to be outside. And then they started to loosen that up a little bit, but they still were like, stay inside, stay home, stay away from people. So we had like lower vitamin D from sunshine. We had more people eating fast food and eating, you know, junk because what we said was, I mean, places like Michigan said you couldn't buy gardening supplies, you couldn't buy seeds in Michigan for a while. You couldn't plant your garden. And then if you're not supposed to go to the farmer's market, you can go to the grocery store and get curbside, but you're not supposed to go to the farmer's market, you're not supposed to go to these places, you're not supposed to go and see people. You're stuck with like the processed fast food junk. And I know I ate a lot. I ate a lot of processed fast food junk. And part of it too is you're told, well, support your local businesses, support your local restaurants and stuff like that. And so you try to do that, try to support your community. But then you're not eating as healthy as you normally would in some cases. And you're not outside, so your health is worse. And people gained weight because you're not supposed to go to the gym. And obesity is a major factor for COVID. A lot of people who died from COVID or had really severe symptoms, really severe cases, were overweight and had low vitamin D. Those were two major correlating factors. Now, are they causal? We don't know. But they're major correlations. And when you see that strong of a correlation, you know there has to be a connection. And so you end up with either COVID causes obesity or you end up with obesity is a risk factor for COVID, which is what we're concluding here. So we tell everybody to be less healthy. We tell everybody to stay inside and stay away from each other rather than saying, go out, build your immune system, go out in the sunshine. And I made a video last May and I said, please go out and be in the sunshine. Please go out, get your vitamin D, get your natural immunity, get fresh air, be around people. Please go do that. And now we're getting the data that sure enough, vitamin D, exercise, healthy diet, and we could let this run through. We could let this run through the population and most people would be fine. And those that are vulnerable could be protected. That's all we had to do. But instead, they dragged this out on purpose. They shut us down. They said slow the spread, flatten the curve. What happens when you flatten the curve? If you have a curve that goes up and down, if you flatten it, you don't reduce the number of deaths. What you do is you spread it out. You make it go on longer. Flatten the curve was about making it go on longer than it would have on its own. And we need to understand that because they're still telling us we have to slow the spread, slow it down, which means it will take longer. If you watch a video and you slow the speed of the video, it will take longer for you to watch the whole video. That's why I usually put stuff on like double speed. Like if I'm watching YouTube videos, I put it on like 1.5x because I want it to be done faster. And I try not to miss stuff, but I want the information quick. They keep telling us to slow it down. And every time we start saying, okay, the numbers are better, we hit all the metrics, let's open up. They say, no, not yet. We're almost there. And this is the thing. They keep saying, we're almost there, we're almost there, we're almost there. So I've got the CDC director, and CDC having to walk back their claim because vaccinated people are getting the virus and they may be spreading it. And we don't know. We don't know if they're spreading it. So this whole idea that like, oh, well, if you're vaccinated, then you can't spread it. That's not true. It's just that we just simply don't know that. But then we have a really interesting article at the end here, at the end of my list of links. And it's Fauci's mask timeline is what I title it. Dr. Fauci talks timeline for removing mask mandate, cautions against declaring premature COVID victory. And he says, hang in there a little bit longer. We're going to get through this, and this is going to end, but don't declare victory prematurely. That's what he says. Like I tell you. That's the thing. And this article just came out yesterday, a day ago. So, I mean, I'm telling you, like, they keep saying, oh, if we get everybody vaccinated, we do all this stuff, great, great, great. And he's still like, nope, we're not there yet. We're not there yet. And we'll never be there so long as we continue to listen to these medical politicians. We will never be there. It's not going to happen. Says, hang in there a bit longer. We're going to get through this. It's going to end, but don't declare victory prematurely. And that's what they're cautioning against. They don't want you to say COVID is over. They don't want you to say that. And he goes over all this stuff. But what's so funny is they're talking about like Thursday with more than 150 million vaccine doses administered across the U.S., blah, 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 blah. He's hoping for a return to post-pandemic normalcy while emphasizing the need for continued public health measures at state level until then. And, he says average cases are down from their peak in January, but Fauci expressed concern over the rising and plateauing of recent trend lines, noticing that infections have gone from 30 to 40 to 50, and now most recently over 60,000 a day. That is usually a forerunner of another surge, he warned. We are in such a good position with the vaccines rolling out in a really good fashion where we're vaccinating, maybe 3 million people per day. And so basically he says basically what he's saying is we are almost there, but those states that are reopening, they could ruin it for us. That's what they're saying. That's what Fauci's saying. And even California is starting to open up. Their Los Angeles and Orange counties are moving up a tier. They're opening more stores. Like stores are having less capacity limits. Restaurants can have indoor dining. Indoor dining in California, yay. But but this is for California. Fauci says they ask if California should slow down in their reopening. Slow down, like they're just now barely starting to reopen. And Fauci goes, I think they need to be flexible and determined if you start to see a tick up to pull back just a little bit. And this is the danger. This is the danger right here. They've created this expectation that at any time, if the numbers change, Fauci or the CDC or the Biden administration or your state government, your state public health, at any time, they can say, oh, hold on, shut down again. Okay, now you can open up, shut down again. And they've given them this level of control that will never go away because they will continue to do this. They will continue to say, oh, nope, pull back, shut down. And right now, you know, they're saying like you still have to wear a mask even if you're vaccinated, and and he says like, as more data accumulates, it's recommend, we might have a recommendation or a statement that if you're vaccinated, you don't have to wear a mask, but we're not there yet. So what is the point of this vaccine? Okay, so supposedly, my understanding of how this vaccine works is that it prevents up to 95%, or it's up to 95% effective or somewhere around there at preventing mild, moderate, and even in some cases severe cases of COVID-19. Now, COVID-19 is not the virus. SARS-CoV-2 is the virus. COVID-19 is the illness that is caused by the virus. Think about it this way. HIV is a virus, AIDS is an illness, right? So you catch the HIV virus and you develop AIDS. You catch SARS-CoV-2 and you develop COVID-19. So the vaccine claims to prevent COVID-19, which is the symptoms, it's the illness, it's the loss of taste and smell, it's the flu symptoms, it's the feeling like you got hit by a truck. That's COVID-19. So the vaccine does prevent, or at least they claim to, the data they have so far says it prevents COVID-19 as in the illness. What they will not claim though, or they cannot definitively state, which is why the CDC had to walk this back. They cannot definitively state that it prevents the transmission or infection with with SARS-CoV-2. This is important because for people like me, I am at relatively low risk. My age group, I have a 99.98% chance of surviving if I get COVID. And most likely, I will have little to no symptoms. I know people around my age, personal people, like friends and people that I know, who have gotten the virus, who have had anywhere from some fatigue to flat on your back for weak flu, both of which I've experienced before with other illnesses. So I look at this and I go, yeah, I get the flu sometimes. I get strep throat. I get whatever. I've gotten viruses before. I've gotten illnesses before. What is different about this for me? And now what they're telling me is, oh, this vaccine may prevent you from having the symptoms, but it may not prevent you from transmitting or being infected with the virus. Which puts me right back where I was, where they said, hey, you're not at high risk, but you might infect someone else. So essentially they've created, I have no incentive to get this vaccine. I've read some things that make me have concerns about it. There's a lot of stuff that's not definitive just because we haven't had long-term testing. Things like fertility. There have been people who've expressed concerns about fertility. And they say, well, we don't have any evidence that fertility is impacted. Yeah, you don't have any evidence. That doesn't mean it's not. It just means that you haven't had a chance to test this. Because here's what we need. Here's the test, right? In order to declare somebody infertile, a woman, in order to declare a woman is infertile, she has to have been actively trying to get pregnant for 6 months. Most doctors will not say that she has fertility issues or won't even look into fertility issues unless she's been trying for 6 months. We haven't even had the vaccine for a full 6 months yet. The trials are a little over 6 months, but you have to have had, in order to know fertility data, you have to have women who are vaccinated, fully vaccinated, actively trying to get pregnant. And enough of them who are actively trying to get pregnant to determine if there's an increase in infertility among the vaccinated population. So we will not know that data for a couple years probably in order for those studies to be done and analyzed and published. So if you're concerned about fertility, I would say wait. If you're not at high risk for COVID, if you're not in the high risk category, and you're concerned about fertility because you would like to have children someday, I would wait. Because some of the initial guidance said, hold on, we're not sure. And now they're trying to say, oh no, it's fine, it's fine. But we don't have data yet to support that claim that it's fine. We don't have any data. We don't have a lot of data. We don't have long-term impact. We don't know if it what impact it will have on you long term. We just don't know. And like you look back at like the HPV vaccine, there were a lot of side effects and severe adverse reactions, especially with some of the early versions of the vaccine that were tested in places like Africa and India, where they were tested on young girls who are now infertile. And then there were tweaks made to the vaccine, and now I think it's slightly better. It's still not great. I never took it, and I don't recommend it. Um, anyway, that's a different topic for another video. But you think about it, this is the early version. This is the beta. This is the beta vaccine. This is really the alpha. It's honestly the alpha vaccine. It's not even the beta. This is not the final version. This is not the final release. If you play video games and the beta testing for a video game is when the early version is released and, people play it, then they got to work the bugs out and stuff like that. But with the vaccine, if you take the vaccine and there's still some bugs in it, you can't just go, oh yeah, they'll fix that. Like you've already taken it. You can't untake it. So that's why that's one of the reasons I'm not getting it. There might still be bugs to work out. Not only that, but they don't even know if it's effective against some of the variants. So I just am not seeing an incentive right now, but that's exactly Dr. Leana Wen's point. She would say, yeah, somebody like me doesn't see an incentive, and therefore we have to have vaccine passports. Therefore, we have to tie opening up to vaccination status so that you can go do things if you're vaccinated and you can't if you're not. That's what she would say. That's her solution. Rather than saying, okay, sure, you're not ready for the vaccine. You can wait while we do some additional testing. Your dose goes to somebody who maybe is ready for it or is at higher risk for COVID. We're also seeing more adverse reactions in younger people. So this is what's interesting. COVID-19 primarily affects older people. Elderly people are more likely to have severe symptoms from COVID-19. Younger people are more likely to be asymptomatic. With the vaccine, it appears to be reversed. Older people who are getting the vaccine are having fewer adverse reactions, and younger people who get the vaccine are having more adverse reactions. Don't know why. No idea why. No idea what that means, what that implies. But to me, it says, all right, I'm at low risk for COVID. The vaccine may not prevent me from spreading it. I'm not going to take the vaccine. Doesn't make sense. I'm at higher risk for adverse reactions. Another category of people who are having more adverse reactions, women. So I am younger and I am a woman. Therefore, I see no reason. Again, the risks are higher for me from the vaccine than they are for COVID, potentially. I could get COVID and have a flu or a cold or whatever and get over it. I could get the vaccine and have flu-like symptoms and get over it. From a purely medical standpoint, it does not make sense for me to take the vaccine versus just go back to normal and live my life. Doesn't make sense from a medical standpoint for me. Now, if you're going to put in this vaccine passport, that's a new factor in the equation. Am I going to lose my job? Hopefully not. As of now, I've been told that my work is not even asking if we've had the vaccine or not. So as long as that continues to be the case, I keep my job, which is great. But I know some of y'all are in different positions. Some of y'all are being told that you have to get the vaccine in order to continue working. And again, hopefully, either they will accept some kind of thing where you get tested regularly. If they're asking for a vaccine card, just saying, there's printable. Go to Twitter, type in blank COVID-19 vaccine card. Just saying. I'm not saying you should. I'm saying it's a thing that people are doing. This is something that people have done. And then if they do this app thing, again, I'm sure people will create versions that may help you get around it. Um, so I, you know, if people have specific situations, you have specific concerns, I'd love to hear. I'd love to kind of help, um, help you work through those or help you think through those. But honestly, I'm really hopeful that if there's enough backlash and if states like Florida say we will not implement these, Biden knows he can't force it. If states are pushing back, he's going to have to do something else. Well, and I say Biden knows. I'm not. I know it's not Biden making these decisions. Like he's repeating whatever they tell him to repeat, including the salute the troops. I don't know if y'all saw, or salute the Marines. Salute the Marines was the line. He was walking down, and there was a line of Marines that were lined up. He was doing like a troop inspection kind of thing, and somebody in his ear said salute the Marines, and so he just repeated that. He just said salute the Marines, like he was supposed to do it, and he did, instead of doing it, he said it. So we know he's just parroting whatever he's being told. And like I get that. But his administration, the people who are running Biden, essentially, they need to realize that it's going to be a lot tougher to implement some kind of vaccine passport. And we need to push back on it at least until we get to that point where the majority of people who wanted the vaccine have gotten it. And the demand for vaccine drops. Once that happens, I think we'll be in a position where it's going to make it a lot harder for them to push the vaccine. Now, what I do predict them doing when we get to that point, I predict them coming out with a updated version of the vaccine, basically a booster. And this is vaccine 2.0, and they're going to make more bold claims about what it can do. And they'll come out of the gate saying this gets you back to normal. This gets you out of the mask mandate, and they'll kind of be more out the gate optimistic about it rather than this kind of hesitant, like, oh, well, maybe you can start not wearing a mask. We don't know yet. But they want to be like, if they'll come out with vaccine 2.0 and say out the gate, you get this, you can go back to normal. And then they'll make everybody who already got the vaccine get the new one. And then everybody who didn't get the vaccine the first time around, then they'll push it on us a lot harder. But I'm hoping that gives us some time to push back on this stuff and hopefully reopen more states again so they have fewer incentives. So your state needs to start reopening. So you need to be calling your state representatives, your local representatives, your local officials. You need to be pushing for that reopening because here's the thing. And I saw this with Greg Abbott in Texas when the whole lockdown thing first started. It didn't occur to me to go call Greg Abbott's office and say, I do not want to lock down because it was so new. But then there were plenty of people calling his office saying, you must lock down. And this is the thing consistently, since this whole thing has started, the people who are decision makers, whether it is presidency, your state legislature, your city, your county, whoever it may be, the decision makers, even as local as your church, if your church is still closed down or requiring masks or doing any of this stuff, the decision makers are primarily hearing from those who are scared of COVID. They are not hearing from people like you. They're not hearing from people who are ready to reopen, who are ready to go back to normal. They're hearing from the people who are scared. What that means is you have to start speaking out. You have to start contacting the people who represent you, the people who make decisions that affect you, and you need to start telling them what you know, which is that we need to go back to normal. Reference data if you have it, but ultimately you need to say, you know what? For young, healthy people, this is a flu. For older people, we can have more precautions, but we need to go back to normal. We cannot keep doing this. I'm done. And tell them, straight up tell them, especially if it's like your church or something like that, church or other group that's been still doing precautions, even though they technically don't have to. Tell them, you say, if we went 100% back to normal, no masks, no distancing, COVID is over. If we did that tomorrow, I'd be 100% fine with it. Not like, oh, we should start relaxing. No, it's like, no, whatever, restrictions we have in place, if those were all gone tomorrow, I'd be 100% okay with that. You need to tell them that because they need to understand that people are ready to move back to normal, because I think there are leaders. This happened with my church. My pastor, he didn't want to shut down, but I think there was pressure on him from different people to shut down, and we did. Our church shut down for a little while. Now, thankfully, it was only for a couple of months. We were open again at the end of May of last year, but he was getting pressure from people who were scared, and he wasn't really hearing from people who weren't scared, because the people who weren't scared of COVID weren't really thinking about it. We weren't expecting to shut down. It didn't occur to us that we should say something ahead of time. So I really encourage you, if you're done with this like I am, you need to reach out to the people who make decisions that impact you, and you need to tell them COVID is over if you want it. And that goes to my last link in my description. It's actually in the channel links in my description. I've got the pregnancy help link. I added that recently, optionline.org. Just want to have that kind of perpetually in the links. But then there's link COVID is over, and it gets you to a card website. I know you probably are familiar with those card.co URLs. You see them a lot. You saw them a lot last summer with people who are doing Black Lives Matter stuff and like mutual aid groups or whatever. But it's just a really easy way to set up a static website page. Like if you just want a one-page static web landing page, it's a really great, easy, free thing. So I just created one. I need to update it to say now that it's more than a year later, because I said I have it. It says yet nearly 1 year later. It's more than a year now, but we're over a year. But it basically says it's supposed to be 15 days. COVID is over. It's never going to go away on its own. We have to say that we're done. And I give some general guidance for what I think needs to happen in order for this to really be done. So I really encourage you to go check that out. There's a printable flyer on that page, as well as social media graphics you can download and share. But the printable flyer, I think, has some potential if you want to start connecting with people in your neighborhood, because we do a lot of social media. We do a lot of that. I think we do need more connections within our neighborhood. And I think it'd be really cool if you started putting these up in your neighborhood and even handing them out to people and seeing the reaction you get. Find out where your neighborhood is at. Maybe you've assumed where they're at. Maybe there's people wearing masks because they think they have to. Are there people in your neighborhood who are done, but just are too scared to say so? Find out. Because the poster and the little graphic and everything is based off of the anti-war campaign of the late 60s, early 70s that John Lennon and Yoko Ono. I don't love them. I don't like John Lennon. I have a lot of issues with him, but I thought the idea was really genius. And it's just this very simple poster with black text that says, and back then it said, "War is over if you want it." This says COVID is over if you want it. And the whole idea was not that declaring, you can't declare war is over as a citizen. You can't just say war is over and then it's over. But what you can say is we are ending this war. We do not support this war. And you can make active steps and push on your legislators, push on your politicians to end it. And John Lennon's idea was that if you got people to just say war is over, got enough people to say that, it would impact the government. Now, how much it really impacts? Now, here's the thing with COVID. With war's over there, right? We don't have as much direct impact in war unless you're in the military. With COVID, it's our everyday life. And if we adopt a mindset that COVID is over, not that the virus no longer exists, but that we are no longer living in fear of it, we can adopt that mindset and we can go forward and live our lives as though it is over. And I think you'd be surprised how quickly, if enough people did that, I think a lot of people would. I think it would be over, at least as far as the state of fear, the state of stress that we are all in. So I do think there's potential with it, but it requires people to go and say it. And if you don't already have a network, I know a lot of people, who in your social circle is done with COVID. Make that list. If you have a list of people who's like, yeah, these people are all done with COVID. They don't care about masks. They don't care about any of this stuff. They're ready to go back to normal. Make yourself that list. Make a group text. Share articles with them. Make an email list. Send them articles. Send them memes. Send them whatever, fun anti-COVID memes, whatever. And then develop this network. Introduce them to each other. If there are people who don't otherwise know each other, introduce them. Create a group. Say, here, we're the COVID is over group of this area, especially if they all live in the same area. Like, hey, let's get together. Let's have a picnic. Let's have a potluck. But if you don't have that group already, if you don't have that list of people, find it. Go out into your neighborhood with the flyers and pass them out. Especially, here's my tip. If you're not sure, if you're nervous about this, take your stack of flyers. Go to your downtown area, go to your shopping center, go to wherever, and look for people who have their mask under their nose. Or who have their mask off entirely, of course. If you see people who either have their mask off, it's on their chin, or it's under their nose, those are people who are just wearing the mask because it gets them into the store. They don't care about COVID if they're doing that. They're not scared of COVID. They just think this is what I got to do. They are going to be much more receptive. If you see somebody with a double mask, if they're wearing two masks, they're probably not going to be receptive. So that's my tip. Take your stack of flyers, go out to your shopping center, to your downtown public square, downtown area where there's foot traffic. Hand the flyers to people who are either not wearing a mask or who are, clearly just wearing it for I need to get into the store. Find those people, communicate with them, hand them a flyer, but also have a conversation. Get their number. Say, hey, can I add you? I've got to say to them, hey, I've got a local text group on GroupMe or whatever. And where I'm sharing information, and maybe we'll plan some kind of community events to kind of start building community and getting back to normal. Would you be interested? But a lot of them would say, yeah, that sounds cool. Put me on the list. Try it out. I'm very blessed in that I do have a community in my church where we have people who are getting together on a regular basis. Every Sunday we have no masks. Tomorrow, Easter Sunday, there will be no masks, or maybe some. There's a couple people who occasionally come who wear masks, but there's no mask requirement. Most people do not wear masks. There's no social distancing. We have church Palm Sunday. We had a big church dinner. Transfiguration, it was like the Sunday after Transfiguration Sunday, we had a big church dinner. We're having these events. So I'm very blessed that I'm in that situation. But if you don't already have that group that's doing that, build it. Because we have to start building these groups. And I almost, in addition to my church, in addition to that group, I almost want to go out and start doing this myself and start building other groups and connecting them to each other. I've been kind of complacent because I've had my church group, but I know a lot of people are not connected like that. So I've gone on a little bit long, but that is my rant on the vaccine passport. We have to build communities. We have to build groups. And on that note of building communities, there's also the Freedom Cells link. I have it in the channel links. Do check that out, because that is also going to be a great way to connect with people who value freedom, who value self-reliance, who value not being dependent on government and not waiting for government to give you permission. It's essentially creating community groups to push back against some of these policies and create groups of people that can help each other out in tough times rather than being reliant on government assistance. So it's kind of a cool thing there. So do check those out. They're kind of basically mutual aid groups, but not communist. So check that out, freedomcells.org, covidisover.card.co. Those are good links, and I've got all those links from those stories. So thank you guys for watching, and I don't know what we'll talk about next week, but if you have ideas, if you have stuff you'd like me to talk about, please say so in the chat, or in the comments, because I'm about to close the chat. So please say so in the comments if you have those things that you want me to talk about, and I will. And otherwise, I'll try to hit on different news stories and stuff like that. But until then, COVID is over if you want it. And y'all have a great week and stay safe.